everyone, and thank you for joining us for this installment of the PHUSE video series, Open Source Technologies in Clinical Data Analytics. My name is Michael Rimler, and I am the Open Source Technologies Director for PHUSE. Joining us today is Mark Lambrecht, Head of Health and Life Science Practices at SAS. In his role at SAS, Mark leads the Healthcare and Life Sciences Industry Team for Europe and Asia and is a member of the Global Leadership Team. He operates on the intersection of research, information science, and analytical cloud technology to solve challenges at hospitals, pharmaceutical manufacturers, and various healthcare organizations. And I should add, has been a friend of PHUSE for quite a long time. Mark, thank you so very much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. Excited to talk to you.
Now, I just mentioned a bit about your role at SAS, but top line it for us. Why do you care about open source in life sciences?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, open source is crucially important. It simply shaped my career. It provided me opportunities to grow. And at the same time, I'm trained as an engineer. So any technology I use, it was and is a means to an end. And so what I'm keen to do is to help provide positive outcomes for patients, like all of us in this industry, and to foster collaboration, scientific collaboration, technical collaboration. That's really what drives me. And I've been a bioinformatics scientist in a company using open source Perl, Python, R, bioconductor libraries in my early career. And from the early beginnings of PHUSE, SAS supported collaboration and sharing, the very essence of PHUSE, right? To today, where I'm leading that team, where I think it's really important, and I tell my team members to collaborate, not just between ourselves, but with the users, share knowledge. I think, honestly, open source didn't by itself invent community or collaboration. That's human behavior. Otherwise, PHUSE, that's really what PHUSE is about. But it likely brought on a couple of new perspectives of how we have to work together. Even where open source technology is important, however, any technology needs to be made reliable, trustworthy, scalable. And starting with any technology as such is very easy, but making it work in production is hard. And that's where I like to help companies.
Great, thank you for that. So I do want to dig in, and the very first thing I want to kind of talk about is what I think is the elephant in the room, and that is that you've been at SAS for nearly 2 decades, and when people tend to talk about open source in pharma, they talk about things like R, Python, and maybe Julia and others, but they don't typically say SAS. In fact, some people would say that SAS has been a bit absent from open source discussion within life sciences. So can you talk to me a bit about where SAS is with respect to open source solutions, like if there's any misconceptions in the community, and help us close some of those gaps?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And I have to say, firstly, there has been a lot of misrepresentations of what SAS is doing in that sense and where we are in relationship to open source. I have to say, not in the least by some of the new entrants and vendors who are seeing this as an easy route to more market share. Unfortunately, several other commercial vendors are trying to single out SAS, as you mentioned it, as a closed software company only, legacy technology. And honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm glad I can put the record straight here. It's not always visible, but open source software and technology has been part of the SAS solutions and technology since many decades. We don't compete with open source, not on the language. We embrace R and Python and Julia. We embrace it in myriad ways. We support those languages. We keep investing in the SAS language because we believe it brings a lot of value. But more importantly, it is the algorithms and the methods that help users to analyze, to transform data. That is really important. And whether they call those methods from an open source language or from the SAS language is open to us. And I can't help but point out that there's a huge paradox in the open source movement at the moment in clinical development. On the one hand, you have diversity and collaboration being heralded, rightfully so, as essential, but then some of the proprietary technology that has been driving a lot of value is being looked at separately and is being excluded from that. So I think we have something to learn from other industries here. Other industries are beyond that phase. They understand that the real answer is to work with both, essentially in an enterprise and production environment. And all approaches have benefits and challenges. Open source technology is great. We see that a lot, but there's thousands of packages. There's maintenance. Over the long term, we have to think of reproducibility, statistical precision. Some of the projects going on to look at that interoperability, the implicit cost of IT, and the cost to be compliant. That's just a few of them. And of course, closed software has downsides, not in the least because it is commercial and you have to pay for it. And that explicit cost is needed to cover its value and to drive investment. So I think the trick is really to know when to use both. There is no free lunch. I manage also another marketplace in healthcare and hospitals and payers. And what I see is that a lot of hospitals are starting with technology, often open source technology, to improve the outcomes with patients. But then they're looking to stabilize that and embrace that in a more stable infrastructure, so that these models and these algorithms can work. And that's often where we come in. Just to conclude, there's nothing wrong with either open source or proprietary software. Both are there to help. I compare it a little bit with pharma companies that work together in a pre-competitive and post-competitive area. You're collaborating with PHUSE in this context a lot, and I see CDIS doing the same and other efforts. Yet pharma companies bring new compounds, they bring new medicines to the market in a for-profit model, and that's their competitive area. And this is quite similar in the way I look at it.
Thanks, Mark. And when it comes to open source, a lot of people think of open source from the consumer perspective, and having open source software is free and it's freely licensed and that sort of thing. But it's also about community contributions. So what is SAS doing in order to directly engage with the industry efforts related to open source?
I would say a lot. We have participated in the past already with PHUSE and CDISC in work groups. Our R&D teams have been part of developing those standards, and we have been directly contributing to that. We have delivered in the CDISC open source initiative COSA, the Open Clinical Standards Toolkit. We've donated that to the public domain. We will release soon a CDISC core integration, and we participate in various projects like IMI, Pioneer, Project Datasphere, the READY initiative, which is a COVID-19 initiative in the US. And open source is prevalent in those initiatives, and we use that, and we add our own technology to that. We support JSON as a format. There is a dataset JSON project there, and today we can fully support that. We have our own GitHub site where we deliver code on that people can freely use. We will soon release a product that can manage FHIR HLF data for millions of patients, so that you can stream the data, analyze the data. And within our own industry SCE, or industry-leading SCE, we support the R language in our GXP core, so that people can use the open source language as well. And also the platform, the recent technology we have, runs on open source Kubernetes cloud container technology as such, so that people can mix and match the different modules of technology, I would say. Maybe just one more concrete example, because I think it really illustrates what we do and how SAS contributes to open source. We are using the Apache Airflow workflow engine in a lot of our solutions. And as we do that, we contribute code back to Apache to improve that as such. And so these technologies help us build solutions, but they also help us to advance then the open source community. We give back to the community as such. And I think that really is down to the very spirit of the open source community.
Now, you just mentioned Apache, you've mentioned Kubernetes, you've talked about R. So let's say I'm a data scientist, I'm working for a sponsor company, small or large, doesn't matter, and I happen to know R, Python, and SAS, maybe SPSS, C++, Java. How can I leverage SAS and use my open source solution toolkit to answer the questions that I have with data analytics?
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, I'm a little bit longer in the industry in my career, and I think it's always good to learn one more language and technology. I know there's sometimes kind of emotional attachment to the knowledge you have to one language, and I get that. I was there in my career as well early on. But certainly, technically, you can remain working in Python or R and call SAS algorithms using APIs, and vice versa. SAS programmers can keep working and can call R, Python from the SAS environment. With SAS Via, we've completely enabled that. So SAS code, R packages, Python libraries are available within SAS Via's tools. We also maintain various Python and R packages that facilitate the efficient transfer of data from SAS Via to R editors, Jupyter notebooks, Visual Studio Code, and those type of editors. And I also see a lot of programmers spending a lot of time in visualization functionalities and technologies, for example, R Shiny. We extend that because we have enterprise capabilities that allow you to work in a visual analytics tool in a no-code, low-code environment. We have to think also about other collaborators and that want to consume the information that we generate in programs and make that available to them in an appealing way. And so for example, the ability to generate React apps for clinicians is something we delivered during COVID-19 and which you will see more of. So I would say, in summary, we keep investing in 3 different ways with relation to open source. First of all, the languages and the bridges towards those open source languages, so that our AI technology is available. Second, we deliver industry solutions that are available to pharmaceutical companies, very specifically for the industry, but also from other industries, like the ability to look at detecting fraud or detecting outliers, decisioning workflows, manufacturing operations. And a lot of those solutions use open source under the hood to make them work and allow people to program models in Python, etc. And thirdly, I mentioned it already, we have brought our technology in a cloud-native Kubernetes environment so that we can deploy it in a scalable, cloud-ready infrastructure. And what this does is it allows users and IT to manage this and use other cloud services from cloud vendors so that you can really choose the best services that you need to create the solution and to get to the insights that are needed. And we all know that in pharma, a lot of new data is coming our way, and that will need to be analyzed. So, yeah.
You've taken the time to mention the work that SAS is doing on a high level. You've mentioned at the life sciences specific level, but really there has to be a why behind the move towards open source. So tell me a little bit about the why that inspires you. What do you see as the true value of open source within clinical data analytics?
For me, open source brings to the pharma world the research-driven spirit to test, to compare, to improve. And as a former scientist, that goes really close to my heart. Not unlike collaboration of scientists in a wet lab that are working together to discover the mode of action of a compound, similarly, or a protein sequence for vaccine development. And honestly, when I joined SAS and I work at SAS, this has been always a spirit at SAS as well. When our CEO, Dr. Jim Goodnight, created SAS, he had this innovation culture in mind, created an organization for us to work together with our customers and get them the best results that they need. And so open source community empowers flexibility. And I think what we want to do is take that flexibility, collaborate in those communities, but take that flexibility and account for compliance, security, trust that is needed in a life sciences space. And enabling our customers with agility without compromising regulatory security concerns that are crucially important when bringing new medicines and new therapies to the patient and to the clinicians. So I think we understand that pharmaceutical companies need to see the value that technology can bring, whether it's SaaS, whether it's open source technology. At some point, the ROI is going to be needed. Michael, a couple of years ago, I was chosen by our executive team to lead a COVID-19 science advisory board. And what I discovered is that cloud technology is important. Yes, technology is important, our own analytical technology, open source. But what truly matters is the SAS experts and what people know about the data and how they can be passionate about delivering the result to hospitals that we help, to pharmaceutical companies to help develop vaccines. So I think that that's really that community spirit that we need to keep growing. And I applaud, therefore, the work that's going on in PHUSE to do that. And I think, to give you another example, commercial database vendors, for example, like Oracle, have done a great job in managing projects like Java and MySQL. Microsoft has embraced Linux and did a good job at it. Yet all these companies have commercial business models, right? So I think the same is happening in the analytical world. We intend to deliver value with our analytics, with driving insights, but work with open source technology and with our users and the community and be part of that. Most people I know at PHUSE are driven by technology, by the clinical field, by curiosity. And that's really the why that you were asking about. That's my why.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mark. So I have one more question. And this has us looking forward a bit. We've seen a lot of change in the industry over the past few years. whether it's been through technology changes, innovation advancement, or even regulatory changes. The entire industry is moving towards that more data-centric and analytics-driven environment. What do you think? What do you see from your vantage point that the next 2 to 3 years of life sciences is going to look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on at the moment, and I'm convinced that clinical trials have changed, but will still massively transform. A couple of elements there: inclusion of new types of data. I think we all see that. And there are digital biomarkers, new science platforms, sensors, precision medicine that will truly transform the way we look at clinical development. I think we will see next to EDC systems other types of data, and other platforms like decentralized clinical trial platforms will become more important, and we will need to harbor them and integrate them. Paradoxically enough, in the context of our discussion, I think that programming will be helped and maybe become a little bit less important or focused on thanks to generative AI and large language models, and that will generate a lot of that code. And I think it will matter less what language you're programming in, but more what outcome you deliver, and your skill to look at the data, the expertise you have about the clinical trial as such. Interoperability will grow, and you see that already with the collaboration with HL7, CDISC, Transcelerate to deliver the M11 clinical electronic structured harmonized protocol, right? So that's a hugely important project where these standards will come together, and they need to come together. Cloud technology keeps evolving very fast. So any solution that we deliver will need to be modular, interoperable. And finally, regulations are changing, and regulators are embracing new ways of working. We're working with the FDA, for example, in modernizing their data science environment. And you see that reviewers all over the world are embracing those tools and technologies to look at data in new ways. And I think that will benefit all of us, and most importantly, the patients.
Well, I think it's clear that that the world is changing, and I'm sure that open source is going to have its home. Thank you, Mark, so much for taking the time to share your perspectives here today. To those watching, I hope you found the session with SAS's Mark Lambrecht both enjoyable and insightful. We're not done yet. We have one more installment up for you next week. So until next time, my friends.